Welcome! Today we are diving deep into a topic that is, no joke, the fundamental language of manufacturing, product costs. Seriously, if you're a business that makes anything, you absolutely have to understand this stuff.
So before we get started, just a quick note. Our mission here is to take what can seem like a really complicated subject and make it super clear, so you can see exactly how a product's value is built, step by step, from the ground up.
I mean, have you ever really thought about it? Not just the big stuff, but everything. It's a simple question, right? But the answer? Well, it's way more interesting than you'd think. It's about every single dollar spent inside the factory to make that thing exist.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics, what our product costs, then we'll break them down into their three core parts. After that, we'll get practical with a real calculation, see how these costs stack up against other business expenses, and finally, wrap it up by seeing how this all looks on the official books.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1. What exactly are we talking about when we say product costs?
At its heart, it's pretty simple. It is every single cost that happens inside the factory to make a product. And these costs fall into three big buckets that we're going to get to know very well: direct materials, direct labor, and the one that trips a lot of people up, manufacturing overhead. Okay, so let's pop the hood and look at those three components. We're going to take the total cost apart, piece by piece, so we can really see what it's made of.
First up, we've got direct materials. This one's the most intuitive, right? It's the actual physical stuff that becomes the product you're selling. It's the core ingredients, the main event.
And to make this super clear, let's imagine we're a company that makes tables. In that case, what's our direct material? It's the wood, of course. You can't make a wooden table without wood. That's the direct material cost.
Next, we have direct labor, and this is key. It's not just any employee. It's the people who are physically touching the materials, the ones on the line who are actually transforming the raw stuff into the finished product.
So back to our table company. This one's a no-brainer. The direct labor cost is what we pay the carpenters, the craftspeople who are cutting, sanding, and assembling that wood into beautiful tables.
And now for our third piece of the puzzle, manufacturing overhead. Just think of this as the everything else category, but, and this is a huge but, it has to be a cost related to the factory. So for our table business, what does that look like? Well, we need a building, right? So, factory rent. We need electricity to run the saws, that's utilities. Even the little things, like the nails holding the legs on, they're all necessary, but they aren't direct material or direct labor. They're overhead.
Now, because manufacturing overhead can be this giant, kind of confusing bucket of different costs, it's really worth taking a closer look. This is where you find all those essential but often hidden costs of production.
And a really smart way to think about this is to split overhead into two smaller groups. First, you've got your indirect materials. Think glue, sandpaper, cleaning supplies. Stuff you need for the process, but you can't easily say, this table used 3 cents worth of glue. Then you have indirect labor. These are people who are absolutely critical for the factory to run, like supervisors or security guards, but they aren't building the tables with their own hands.
All right, enough theory. We've seen all the individual ingredients. Now let's put it all together and cook something up. We're going to run the numbers and find the true cost of making 1,000 tables. Okay, here's the data. The company spent $12,000 on wood. That's our direct material. It paid the carpenters $2,000. That's our direct labor. And then all the other factory stuff, our manufacturing overhead, added up to $1,100. And that was made up of $100 for nails, $500 for security, and another $500 for rent and utilities. So you just add it all up, the direct material, the direct labor, and all that overhead. And what do you get? A total product cost of $15,100. That is the total investment to create those 1,000 tables.
But here's where it gets really powerful. The total cost is one thing, but what a business really needs to know is the cost for one single unit. So we take that total, $15,100, divide it by the 1,000 tables we made, and we get $15.10. That number is everything. It tells you the absolute minimum you can sell a table for without losing money.
Now this next part is super important. We have to draw a clear line between product costs and another big category of expenses called period costs. Mixing these two up is a classic mistake.
This chart lays out the difference perfectly. The easiest way to think about it is this. Product costs happen in the factory. Period costs happen in the office. So things like marketing campaigns, paying your sales team, or the rent for your corporate headquarters, those are all period costs. They're tied to a period of time, like a month, not to making a specific thing.
Okay, for our final section, let's follow the money trail. How do these product costs actually make their way onto a company's official financial statements? Because they take a pretty unique journey.
And here is the big twist. Unlike period costs, which become an expense the moment you spend the money, product costs don't. Instead, they get bundled together and they sit on your balance sheet as an asset called inventory. Which makes sense, right? The company spent money, but now it owns 1,000 tables it can sell. That's valuable.
This visualizes that whole journey perfectly. First, all those costs get collected into the inventory asset. Then, step 2, you sell a table. And only at that moment, the moment of sale, does the cost finally jump over to the income statement and become an expense, called cost of goods sold. That's when it finally reduces the company's profit.
Which brings us right to the end and to the most important question of all. Calculating a product's cost is step 1. But the real art and the path to making more money is figuring out how to control and reduce each of those pieces, the materials, the labor, and especially that sneaky manufacturing overhead. That's the billion-dollar question that this knowledge lets you start to answer.